Well, you see, the thing is this, the argument, do you write it for the publication? I'm so bloody tired at night that I've got to get the damn thing done before I go to bed. I mean, I've stayed up till 3 in the morning. If there was, on the night we drove to the manifesto of 79 election, I stayed up till 3. I once went to sleep doing my diary in Tokyo, and I've got a recording of the moment when you move into unconsciousness and then wake up with a jerk and try and start again, and that's there. And the funny thing about a tape diary is that the tape diary is much more interesting than the typed diary from tape. Because, for example, I yawn, I sneeze, the telephone rings, I cough. And you get something from the tape diary which you wouldn't get, not that it's done for that reason, because I couldn't write it out in the time. But a tape diary is more interesting than a typed diary. But, I mean, I agree with Alastair, your job is just to get it down. And then you learn from it. I do find that the archives are, in a way, even more interesting. For example, I first went to number 10 in 1930, 78 years ago. Ramsay MacDonald invited his daughter, Ishbel, who looked after him because his wife had died, invited my mother to send the children to watch the Trooping of the Colour. And I've got a letter on number 10 notepaper from Ishbel to my mother saying, would the boys like to come to the Trooping of the Colour? Unless you feel it would give them the impression that soldiers were good people. So if you'd like, we'll arrange an anti-militaristic lecture after the Trooping of the Colour. And Ramsay MacDonald gave me a chocolate biscuit. And I said afterwards I'd expected to see soldiers, but I'd expected to see the Prime Minister, but I hadn't expected to get a chocolate biscuit. And after what Ramsay MacDonald did, I've been looked at great suspicion at all Prime Ministers that offer you a chocolate biscuit. I've had quite a few. Now that is something. Then, for example, in the 35 election, I distributed literature which I've kept, one of which was issued by the miners, saying that in the 9 years before the 35 election, 1,200,000 miners were injured in the pits and 7,800 were killed in the pits in 9 years. So now you know why we had a National Health Service and why Aaron Bevan, a Welsh miner, became the Minister of Health. And when the miners' strike, I produced that leaflet and reproduced it and said, this is what it was like in the old days when the pits were privately owned. So it's a working document. And I can't do more than say I put it down as soon as I could. If the cabinet in the morning was interesting, I'd miss my lunch and dictate the diary, because it had to be accurate. And mind you, tape diaries do create one little problem, because the people who typed it didn't quite know what was going on. And one woman who typed it said, you might not like to want this mentioned. So I said, why? And she said, well, it said you saw Cuddly Poo. So I went to the tape, and it said, I saw Hugh Cuddly Poo said to me. And they said, I gather you had a friendship with a Russian ballet dancer. I said, who was that? He said, Zinovia Fletter. Well, that was the Zinovia Fletter. So, you know, the difference between the tape and the typing, but it's terribly tiring. But I'm carrying on with it, even though I have nothing very interesting at the moment, but well, quite a bit.
One of the really very interesting features about both the diaries is that women are both very important in them, but actually, in a sense, marriages are very important in them. The Blair marriage is central. Your own marriage is, in a sense, not central exactly, but it's certainly very much one of the architectures that you're dealing with. The ongoing problem actually of finding Cherie Blair a role that kind of fits a woman who works but who's married to the Prime Minister and who is also the Prime Minister's wife and is trying to do that. I think your own wife, I mean, there's a constant refrain in both of your diaries. And if I may say so, Tony, yours is now very retrospective. You're saying, I miss Caroline, I wish I'd spent more time with her, I wish I'd spent more time with the children. Would you like to tell us about, I think, the terrible costs that we now seem to impose on political marriages?
Well, I've never seen marriage as architecture. Look, there is no doubt. I mean, one of the things that comes through this single volume account, which is sort of distilled version of the whole thing, which is kind of this big, is the fact that Fiona, my partner, was completely opposed to me doing the job in the first place. And that does become a kind of, it just sort of keeps coming up and up and up. And it's, again, I said earlier, all I'm trying to do is show that people in politics are no different to any other walk of life, apart from those big differences, the scale of the decisions and the public and media scrutiny. And it is very, very difficult, that business of trying to operate as ordinary, normal human beings within this kind of bigger political context. And in the end, it's just down to people. I don't know whether there are more broken marriages in politics than any other walk of life. My hunch would be there aren't. But I certainly think that I would, whilst at the same time, sometimes that relationship with Fiona, who was kind of opposed to me being there, but trying to help, that could be a tension. Equally, she was always the person that I would look to when things were really tough. Now, there's a dichotomy there that's just, I think, the same again in any other walk of life. I don't think that's different to any relationship, meaningful, strong, powerful relationship. So, if I may say so, I don't think you've gone to one of the big points of the book there.
I went to one of the points that I found really interesting.
Yeah, but I don't think it's any more interesting for the fact that it's a political diary.
Oh, but I think those are marriages under particular pressure because of the, for instance, the way in which the.
I mean, if I'd have been Fiona, the pressure would probably. I might have said, do you think just for once you could sort of come to bed and not lie there, writing your bloody diary again? I mean, that would have been a more. No, I just don't think it's. I mean, politics is difficult. Tony and Cherie did not ask to be married to the Prime Minister. She married somebody who happened to become the Prime Minister. And what is true is that you can record, but I think it's a pretty minor strand of the book, to be honest, but there are points at which Cherie trying to find a role, or us trying to devise a way of managing this kind of ferocious media that, because this is the other big difference with the modern politics, is that you are expected to kind of deliver up the whole package. So it's not just you, the politician, that is up for grabs, as it were, and up for media scrutiny. It's your family, it's your kids, it's anything you've ever done in the past. And we're now you look at one of the constant complaints of, as well, you look at the quality of people coming into politics and it's not as the same as it was in Tony Benn's day. You'll get that all the time. Now, I wonder if that's true anyway. What I do think, though, is that I know there are people who are put off from going into politics because of this sort of aspect of it, where the pressures on the family, the fact that everything you've done in your past, and there's not a single person in this room who has not done something in their past that if they saw it on the News of the World front page because they were terribly well known, they think, ouch. So, you've just got to accept that and get on with it. And I reached a point where, and again, Fiona was hugely helpful in this because I think she sort of got to the same point as well, is where whether you want a profile or you don't want a profile, once you get the profile, you might as well stop worrying about it because it's just there and they're going to take lumps off you if they can. As long as you believe in what you're doing and you keep on doing what you're doing, then you can kind of get through it. Is a marriage important to that? Yes, but it's no different if you're driving a bus or running a bank.